What happens when the king is no longer the most powerful man in the kingdom? This is the untold true story of Bashorun Gaa, the feared prime minister of the old Oyo Empire, who ruled from the shadows in 18th century Yorubaland. He wasn't a king, but he made and unmade kings. His reign was filled with political manipulation, sorcery, brutal executions, and unstoppable ambition. In this powerful African history documentary, we dive deep into Gaa's rise from war general to Bashorun, how he dethroned 4 Alaafins, kings of Oyo, the shocking murder of Alaafin Abiodun's daughter, the legendary rebellion that led to Gaa's gruesome death, his lasting legacy in Yoruba, proverbs, folklore, and culture. Was Gaa a hero or a villain? A visionary corrupted by power, or simply a man who went too far? Watch till the end to understand why Bashorun Gaa is remembered as one of the most dangerous men in Yoruba history. In the heart of the Oyo Empire, there once lived a man so powerful, so feared, even kings bowed to him. They called him Bashorun, but his real name was Terror. He didn't wear the crown, he chose who wore it. 4 kings died under his shadow, some by poison, some by blade, all by fear. He ruled not from a throne, but from the darkness behind it. They say he couldn't be killed, that he could vanish into thin air, turn into a beast, and walk through fire untouched. But when the people had had enough, they dragged him to the market square and made every man, woman, and child cut his flesh, piece by piece. This is not myth. This is not a tale. This is the rise and fall of Bashorun Gaa, the man who made kings kneel until the people made him burn. In the 18th century, the Oyo Empire stood as one of the most powerful kingdoms in West Africa. Spanning from the Niger River in the north to parts of present-day Togo and Benin in the west, Oyo's political and military influence was unmatched. At the heart of this empire was a complex power structure. While the Alaafin, the king, held the highest title, his authority was constitutionally checked by a council of 7 titled chiefs, known as the Oyomesi. The most powerful among them was the Bashorun, who served as both prime minister and head of the military. In theory, this balance of power was designed to prevent tyranny. In practice, it created an opportunity for ambition. One man would seize that opportunity. His name was Gaa, the son of a former Bashorun named Yamba. Gaa came from a noble line and was trained both as a statesman and a warrior. From a young age, he displayed exceptional military talent, rising quickly through the ranks of Oyo's army. He led successful campaigns against rival states such as Dahomey and Nupe, earning the admiration of the army and the trust of the people. By the mid-18th century, Gaa's reputation as a general was well established. His rise coincided with a period of instability in the monarchy. Previous Alaafins had ruled with cruelty and excess. Kings like Odarawu, Jayin, and Kanran had all left behind legacies of fear, brutality, and failure. The people of Oyo were growing weary of royal tyranny. Many saw Gaa as a corrective force, an honest man with the courage to stand against corrupt kings. In 1754, Gaa was appointed Bashorun of Oyo. It was a move welcomed by both the military and the public. Gaa was expected to restore order, discipline, and justice within the state, and for a brief moment, he did. But behind his calm exterior, Gaa was already laying the groundwork for something far more dangerous. Upon the death of Alaafin Onisile, the throne became vacant. The young Prince Lled was nominated to ascend as the new king, but Gaa, now Bashorun, immediately began to assert himself. Before Lled could be properly crowned, Gaa executed many of his supporters and placed restrictions on his movement. For 17 days, the Alaafin-elect was neither allowed to sit on the throne nor perform any royal functions. Surrounded by fear and political isolation, Lled took his own life, a traditional act to avoid disgrace when one loses the confidence of the Oyomesi. This event marked a turning point in Oyo history. Gaa, originally appointed to protect the kingdom from despotism, had forced the first suicide of an Alaafin. From this point forward, Bashorun Gaa would no longer serve as a check on royal power. He would become the power, and the empire would begin its slow descent into tyranny. Following the death of Alaafin Lled in 1754, who was never fully crowned, Bashorun Gaa began to assert unprecedented dominance over the political affairs of the Oyo Empire. As Bashorun, he was constitutionally empowered to lead the Council of Chiefs, oversee military affairs, and act as the kingdom's prime minister. However, Gaa gradually transformed the position into something far more powerful. He began to control the throne itself, choosing who would become Alaafin and determining who would live or die. The next king, Alaafin Awonbioju, was Gaa's own choice. He was installed quickly after Lled's death, but even that was not enough. Gaa demanded public loyalty beyond custom. In one now infamous incident, he ordered the Alaafin to prostrate before him in full view of the court, a direct violation of royal dignity. When Awonbioju refused, Bashorun Gaa acted swiftly. Within 130 days of ascending the throne, Awonbioju was dead. Most accounts state he was executed on Gaa's orders. Others claim he was poisoned. Regardless of the method, it was now clear that no Alaafin could remain on the throne without Gaa's approval and unquestioning submission. What followed was the rise of a shadow government. While Oyo still had a king in title, all real power flowed through Gaa. He placed his sons and relatives as governors, ajeles, over key provinces, giving them direct control over taxation, tributes, and law enforcement. These men were loyal only to Gaa, and they ruled the outer regions with violence and impunity. In effect, the Oyo Empire became a family empire under Bashorun Gaa. The fear of the Bashorun spread beyond politics. Oral traditions and legends began to circulate about his supernatural abilities. It was said that Gaa could shapeshift into animals, a leopard, an elephant, or a bird, depending on what danger he sensed. Some believed he possessed spiritual charms so strong that no weapon could pierce his skin. Others claimed he could not be killed by ordinary means. These stories, whether exaggerated or not, increased his influence as even seasoned warriors and high-ranking chiefs began to fear retaliation beyond the physical world. Meanwhile, the Council of the Oyomesi grew silent. Once created to balance royal power, the Oyomesi had now become a tool of the Bashorun himself. The Bashorun could intimidate, bribe, or eliminate any member who opposed him. What was meant to be a democracy of nobles had become an arm of authoritarian rule. Over the years, Gaa developed a pattern. He would install a king, watch him closely. If the king showed independence or gathered popular support, Gaa would orchestrate his death, either through ritual suicide, execution, or forced disgrace. By the end of the 1750s, 2 Alaafins had already perished under Gaa's grip. The message was clear across the empire. No one, not even the king, was safe. The people who once celebrated Gaa for standing up to tyrants had now begun to whisper about a greater tyrant in their midst. The fear of Gaa became institutional. His name was enough to silence courts, cancel disputes, and crush revolts. His appointees across Oyo conducted executions without trial. Even his slaves were known to commit murders, confident that the Bashorun's name would shield them from justice. And yet no one could stop him. Not the Oyomesi, not the Alaafin, not even the gods, it seemed. The empire now had 2 thrones, one visible and one untouchable, and Bashorun Gaa sat firmly on the latter. By the early 1760s, Bashorun Gaa had already forced the deaths of 2 Alaafins. Labisi had died in political isolation. Awambioju had been executed for refusing to bow. But Gaa's grip on Oyo would only grow tighter, and more kings would fall. The next monarch to ascend the throne was Alaafin Agboluaje, a careful, diplomatic man. Historians describe him as tall, intelligent, and deeply aware of the fate that had befallen his predecessors. He ruled with caution, never openly challenging Gaa's authority. And for a time, it seemed to work. During Agboluaje's reign, the kingdom experienced a brief moment of celebration. The Bebe Festival, a traditional jubilee ceremony marking peace and prosperity, was declared for the first time in many years. The festival was grand and lasted 3 years, attracting attention from foreign allies and provincial leaders across Yorubaland. Among the guests was Elewi Odo, a subordinate king from a coastal territory near present-day Popo. He arrived in Oyo dressed in rich European garments, possibly gifts from Portuguese traders. The display, though festive, caused murmurs. Many in the court whispered that Elewi Odo's appearance had outshined the Alaafin himself. But it was not the Alaafin who felt insulted. It was Bashorun Gaa. Gaa, already known for his pride and short temper, took deep offense. He believed it was an attempt to embarrass the Oyo court, or worse, himself. He immediately demanded that Agboluaje punish the Elewi Odo. The Alaafin refused. He insisted that it was a festival and that guests were meant to dress in their best attire. He even pleaded with Gaa to let it go. Gaa refused. The Elewi Odo, warned by friendly chiefs, fled the city before Gaa's men could reach him. But the damage was done. Alaafin Agboluaje, now caught between his conscience and Gaa's wrath, became overwhelmed. Fearing disgrace and knowing the pattern of his predecessors, he took poison and ended his own life. He became the 3rd Alaafin to die under Gaa's shadow. Soon after, Prince Majogbe was selected as the next Alaafin. But Majogbe was not as cautious as Agboluaje. He had a different plan. He would remove Bashorun Gaa before Gaa removed him. Historical accounts suggest that Majogbe conspired with palace herbalists and loyal chiefs to poison Gaa. The poison worked, but not completely. Gaa survived, but was left crippled in both legs. He now moved with difficulty and avoided appearing in public, hiding his physical weakness. But his mental grip on the empire remained unshaken. Majogbe's attempt, though daring, would prove fatal. Not long after, a minor dispute broke out between the Alaafins' son and one of Gaa's provincial agents. Gaa seized the moment. He accused the king of losing control of his household, and the offense was exaggerated into a political crisis. Within weeks, Majogbe was deposed and killed, either by Gaa's direct command or forced suicide. 4 kings had now fallen in less than 2 decades. Across the empire, fear solidified into silence. No chief dared speak against the Bashorun. No town rebelled against his agiles. Even the Oyomesi had become ceremonial, stripped of influence. People stopped asking, "Who is the king?" Instead they asked, "Where is Gaa?" By the late 1760s, Bashorun Gaa had turned Oyo into a kingdom ruled by fear. He held no royal blood, but he held more power than any Alaafin before him. And while the people whispered of his cruelty, they also whispered something else, that Gaa could not be killed. That his body was protected by charms, that he had made pacts with spirits in the forest, that if you attacked him, your own shadow would turn against you. Whether fact or folklore, these stories kept him untouchable. But his reign was not yet over. There would be one more king, and this one would not die so easily. By the early 1770s, Bashorun Gaa had become the most powerful man in the Oyo Empire. He had outlived 4 kings. His enemies either vanished or bowed. His sons ruled over distant provinces like kings themselves, and his name, spoken in fear, echoed from Oyo to Dahomey. But even the most feared man in the land had enemies he could not see. After the death of Majogbe, the next Alaafin chosen was Prince Abiodun, a quiet, intelligent royal with a calm disposition. Many believed he would go the same way as the others, another puppet, another victim. But Abiodun was different. He did not confront Gaa. He did not question him. Instead, he obeyed. Every morning, Alaafin Abiodun paid personal homage to Gaa. He sent gifts. He consulted him on decisions. He even addressed him with words of deep respect. To outsiders, Abiodun looked weak. To Gaa, he looked harmless. But in reality, Abiodun was playing a long game. What the Bashorun did not know was that the Alaafin was building alliances in silence. And when the time came, he would strike. The breaking point came with an act so personal, so unforgivable, it could not be ignored. According to oral tradition, Gaa murdered Abiodun's only daughter, a young woman named Agbonyin. The reasons differ. Some say it was for ritual sacrifice. Others claim Gaa mistook her for an animal needed in a ceremony because her name, Agbonyin, sounded like Agbonrin, the Yoruba word for deer. But whatever the cause, the impact was clear. Alaafin Abiodun had lost his child to the man who ruled over him. It was no longer politics. It was personal. Abiodun began reaching out to powerful nobles across the empire, men who had quietly endured Gaa's oppression for years. He found support in 2 critical figures. The Areona Kakanfo, the supreme military commander, a warrior named Oyabi of Ajase. The Onikoi, a key provincial chief who had grown tired of Gaa's excesses. And in a move that changed everything, Gaa's own brother, Olubi, was convinced to betray him after Abiodun promised to make him the next Bashorun. Together, they formed a secret alliance, bringing in other chiefs and town leaders who were ready to rise against the Bashorun. For the first time in decades, the grip of fear was loosening. In 1774, the plan was set in motion. Across Oyo, in every province where Gaa's sons had been installed as rulers, insurrections broke out simultaneously. Local fighters ambushed their homes. Palaces were set on fire. Some of Gaa's sons were killed on the spot. Others fled, abandoning their positions and leaving the Bashorun structure exposed. In the capital city, Oyo Alaafin Abiodun gathered his forces. Led by the Kakanfo Oyabi and supported by town militias, they marched on Gaa's compound. But this was no ordinary rebellion. The people themselves joined in. Men who had lost fathers, women whose children were kidnapped, elders who had waited silently for justice. Now they stood behind their king, not with words but with weapons. Gaa tried to resist. Despite being crippled from a previous poisoning attempt, he ordered his guards to hold the palace. But his power had already collapsed from within. Even some of his loyalists abandoned him as the forces surrounded his compound. Eventually, Bashorun Gaa was captured, alive. For the first time in over 20 years, the man who made kings kneel was brought before the people, and they were not interested in mercy. In 1774, after nearly 2 decades of absolute control, Bashorun Gaa was captured alive. The rebellion had been swift and precise. His sons were dead or missing. His brother had betrayed him, and the people of Oyo, long held in fear, now stood united behind Alaafin Abiodun. But for a man believed to possess supernatural powers, said to be invincible, untouchable, even unkillable, his death would not come quickly. He was brought before the people in the Akasan Market Square, in the heart of Oyo Ile. Here, the same crowd that once whispered his name in fear now demanded blood. This was no ordinary execution. According to oral tradition, the punishment was designed to match the terror he inflicted. It is said that the king ordered every citizen, man, woman, and child, to come forward and cut a piece of Gaa's flesh. One by one, the people approached. Each person took a knife and carved off a piece. They threw the pieces into a burning fire set beside him. He was not allowed to die quickly. Vital parts of his body were left untouched in the beginning, so he would remain conscious. So he would feel every pain. So he would watch his power, his body, his fear burn. This public dismemberment was ritualistic. It was not just revenge. It was a statement, a warning. When the last piece was taken and the screams had stopped, his body, what remained of it, was set fully ablaze. His ashes were scattered far from the royal grounds to prevent any hope of spiritual return or reincarnation. The spell of fear had been broken, and so ended the life of Bashorun Gaa, the Kingmaker, the warlord, the sorcerer prime minister who had outlived 4 Alaafins and nearly consumed the empire from within. But though the man had fallen, his legacy would live on in a single Yoruba proverb. If you are bold enough to do evil, remember the death of Gaa and speak the truth instead. In the years that followed, Alaafin Abiodun ruled with more stability. He restructured the government, removed Gaa's loyalists, and tried to restore trust in the monarchy. But the scars of Gaa's reign ran deep. The Oyomesi never recovered their balance of power, and the empire, weakened by years of internal terror, began a slow decline. Vassal states like Dahomey stopped paying tribute. Military command fractured. And by the early 1800s, rebellions and foreign pressure would bring Oyo to its knees. By 1836, the Oyo Empire collapsed entirely, its capital destroyed, its authority scattered. Some historians trace that fall directly to Bashorun Gaa, not because he was the final blow, but because his reign of terror broke the heart of the empire from within. He ruled through fear. He silenced kings. He built a legacy soaked in power, pain, and blood. But in the end, the people remembered. They remembered their daughters, their brothers, their broken homes, and together they ended the reign of Bashorun Gaa. His story is not a legend, it is a lesson that no man is bigger than the people. If you felt this story, don't just scroll away, share it, comment, and subscribe to Tales of the Ancestors for more African history you will never hear at school. History isn't just about kings and kingdoms, it's about the courage to stand when others kneel.